Hi, welcome back to TEFL Online here in Glasgow, and here we have the great honour of having David Noonan along to speak to us, and it is a great honour. I mean, I can remember reading some of your books when I was doing my diploma and things like that. So it's great to have you here to be interviewed.
Good to be here.
And you're here for a panel discussion tomorrow on, and one of the themes I heard was how young is too young to start learning a language. So
yes, the panel discussion. There are five of us. We'll hopefully our presentations will be relatively short, and we can devote most of the session to interactive discussions with the audience, assuming that we've got an audience.
I'm sure you will have.
But
yeah.
yes, the general theme is the young learner, and one of the big questions is what is the best age to begin learning another language? And there is this assumption on the part of many ministries of education and the general public as well, that the earlier you begin learning another language, the better you're going to be. And so one of the practical, or one of the policy implications of that is that for the last 10 or 15 years, governments around the world have been lowering the age at which English is introduced as a compulsory subject in schools, into primary schools and so on.
And where do you stand on this? Is younger better, or should they establish the mother tongue first? Or
well, to me, it's a non-question really, in a way, because imagine if we're thinking about another subject such as mathematics. You wouldn't say is younger better. You wouldn't, or the sort of mathematical concepts that you were teaching, you might start in kindergarten, for example. We'll pick up 3 blocks, put 4 blocks over here. But when I said that it's a kind of a non-question, doing empirical research is very difficult because, again, using the analogy of mathematics, if you were comparing, say, a 5-year-old and a 15-year-old and a 20-year-old on their mathematical abilities, then it's nonsensical, isn't it?
Yeah,
because,
it's not.
Because cognitively and mentally and all, so on and so forth, a 5-year-old is very different. Actually, a 5-year-old and a 6-year-old and a 7-year-old are all very different. And so, therefore, trying to do comparative studies to settle this issue of if you start someone at the age of 5, and you look at someone who starts learning at the age of 15 and then compare them at the age of 20, are the ones who begin at the age of 5 any better at the age of 20 than the 15-year-olds who start at the age of 15 and have only been learning for 5 years? And the answer is no, that the ones who started learning the language at the age of 5 are not necessarily better at the age of 20 than the ones who started at 15.
Really?
Yeah.
And
again,
there's been longitudinal studies to sort of prove that.
There's been at least one.
Yeah.
So you then have to look at the study in some detail, and if I put on my hat as a researcher and I look at these studies in detail, then I start asking all sorts of other questions. Not just questions to do with cognitive development, but questions such as what was the curriculum that the younger learners were given? Was the teacher specifically trained? Well, first of all, was the teacher trained in anything?
Yes.
Secondly, was the teacher trained to teach English? And was the teacher trained to teach English to young learners?
Yes.
As an example, I was in a country that I won't mention, not because I don't want to denigrate the country, but I was doing workshops in this particular country, and one of the teachers in the workshop during the coffee break said to me in a rather aggrieved way, "Well, I'm teaching English to primary school kids, although I'm trained as a high school geography teacher."
Yes.
And when the government decided to lower the age at which English was to be introduced as a compulsory subject, the head teacher of the school said, "Well, we don't have enough English teachers. You went to the US to do your master's degree at the University of Miami or wherever it was, so you're obviously fluent in English, so you can teach these kids."
You're now the English teacher.
And she said, "Well, I was neither qualified to teach English, nor was I qualified to teach young learners." So there's that. Another issue is how much instruction did the learners receive. A lot of these programs for younger and younger learners very often the learners only get an hour a week.
Yes. Yeah.
And so you have to then question the adequacy of the amount of exposure. So there are lots of different factors, you know, the appropriacy of the materials, the appropriacy of the curriculum, the training of the teacher, the amount of exposure that the learners have to the language itself.
Yeah.
And even, I mean, I don't know if you're familiar with young learners, but they
I've got a 2-year-old.
Okay, well,
and
so
we're trying to. My wife is Venezuelan, so we're trying to bring her up bilingually.
Yeah, well, that's great.
Yeah.
And that's very different from if you know, because the child is being surrounded by a Spanish as well as an English-speaking milieu.
Yeah, yeah.
And so it's a much different system or a much different situation or context from the 1 hour a week of Spanish that some 4-year-old might get in a primary school in Glasgow or anywhere.
Yeah, in a huge group of others.
Sure.
And,
yeah. But you will. So you'd already be aware that a 2-year-old is a very different creature from an 18-month-old.
Yes.
So the cognitive, social, affective, and every other aspect of development is really quite remarkable in the primary school years. And so the way that a 6-year-old thinks is quite different from the way a 5-year-old thinks, and so on and so forth. And this needs to be taken into consideration when you're designing educational materials, whether it's for teaching a foreign language or for teaching mathematics or whatever. But there is growing amount of evidence, and I think this evidence is beyond dispute, that if you do get learners effectively acquiring another language, say as in the case of your daughter, was it a daughter?
Yeah, it is a daughter.
Okay, because all of my kids are daughters and my granddaughters are daughters as well. So I tend not to think of. I tend to assume that everybody has daughters. But there's growing evidence from studies that use MRI imaging to show that the neural pathways of a bilingual child are more flexible and develop differently from monolingual kids.
Yeah. It's interesting because I have an older daughter as well who had a different kind of upbringing. She grew up abroad but wasn't in a bilingual family at the time, but went to school and was exposed to sort of more different languages and did start learning languages at a much younger age.
Right.
And although in her I don't see, an amazing ability to pick up language, her pronunciation is very, very good of the languages that she learns. She can speak French very well now, and she's learning a bit of German as well, and so she does. Something's clicked there that sort of helped the She's 18 now.
Okay.
So
that's good. Yeah, so she's got a very good basis then for going on and working on the languages that she's in the process of acquiring, as well as learning new ones.
Yeah.
So several of the speakers in the panel discussion tomorrow will be addressing this issue of does younger equal better. My contribution, I'm going to report on some work that I'm doing in Vietnam and Korea, looking at blended learning programs for primary school kids, where part of the instructional day is devoted to digital learning, and then the rest of the time is with a...
There's a similar issue there, isn't there? Because there's this argument going on about screen time and how young is too young to start with the screen.
Right.
And again, I've got my daughter who's 2 was sort of on a screen from 6 months old as well. And sort of learning things.
Well, I was just down in Warwickshire with my 11-month-old granddaughter, and she was constantly trying to get onto my computer. And with the mobile phone, if you leave your mobile phone lying around, she'd have it in her hand. She'd be stabbing at it and trying to.
And so, what age group is the project in Vietnam?
From grades 1 through 6, so the entire span of primary school.
And what would the ratio be of blended to face-to-face?
Well, the digital learning happens in the classroom, and so I got brought in to do an evaluation of the program that was developed by originally Korea Telecom, but the kind of ideological motivation behind it is to develop a digital learning program that can be used in resource-poor parts of Vietnam as well as other parts of the world, where the teachers very often have minimal command of English themselves, so the learners don't get a rich learning input, and so that would provide that sort of, first of all, it would provide individualised attention to the learners. The teacher can make decisions about whether you need to do more vocabulary work during that part of the lesson, I need to work more on my pronunciation, so on and so forth. And what I'm working with the teachers at the moment is trying to get them to see what the digital, what the tablet-based digital learning experience can do that a large class, because the classes typically are 60 kids.
That's right. Yeah.
What the digital part of the learning day can provide that the teacher-fronted part of the day either can't feasibly do or can't do as well, and then what it is that the teacher can do with the other group. So you divide the class into half. So when the teacher is working directly with the students, she's not working with 60 kids, she's working with 30 kids. And the other 30 are working on tablets. So she can give more individualised attention, but she can also do the things that that face-to-face learning does well. You're socialising the kids, you're getting them to use language in a real context, and so on and so forth.
Sounds great.
It's fascinating, and I've got about 80 hours of videotapes, because in addition to the kind of large camera, such as the ones we're using here, I used a lot of the little action, the little cubes, and just had those set
just
around.
sort of monitoring what's happening and
well,
things
just
like that.
Almost at random, I put them around. I might put one of them for an entire lesson on one kid, and I've just got some magic stuff that I didn't even notice as I was in the class as an observer. There's one wonderful clip, and I've actually given a plenary, I've called it multitasking kid, where there's this kid with his tablet, and it's supposed to be part of the teacher-fronted part of the lesson, and the teacher's got some of the kids out the front, but the others are sitting at these hexagonal pods. They're not actually supposed to be, they're supposed to be partly working with the digital learning program, but when the teacher is working with these other kids interactively, this multitasking kid takes a photograph of the teacher and then gets an art app and starts colouring it in, and then calls some of his mates to have a look.
Every teacher's nightmare.
And then the teacher turns around and he just goes back to the program he's supposed to be. And he had I hadn't noticed this, but when I reviewed the tape later on, I was absolutely. He had something like 12 apps open on his.
Really?
Just go back and forth.
Great.
One of the things that was fairly clear to me, even though there was no controlled experimentation, was that the kids' pronunciation was actually quite good. And so I think that that part of the program, I think, was working quite well. But
Great.
Kids are just delightful, completely uninhibited. And also, as coming back to what I was saying earlier about how kids developmentally are very different, from one year to the next. So the grades 1 through 3, they loved the games and the chats and the animals. I mean, one of the good things about the program was that the creatures and the characters come to life. They're rather than in a textbook where they're just stuck there on the page. But by the time and I also did very detailed interviews with the kids, the teachers, parents, and so on. And the kids were very forthcoming about what they thought was good and what they thought was not so good about the digital learning product. I mean, by the fifth and sixth grade, the kids are saying, well, we don't want to be doing chants, we don't want to be doing songs, that's kid stuff. That's for those grade 1, grade 2 kids, we're grown-ups.
Yeah, great, fantastic. Well, thanks for coming along, and I know you're in a hurry, so I won't keep you too long. So thanks for coming along and talking to us, and I hope I'm sure the panel debate will go very well tomorrow. I think we're filming it, so it should be online if you want to watch later.
Great.
And thanks for coming along and talking to us.
My pleasure entirely.
Okay, so we're finished for today, but come back tomorrow. We'll be live streaming the plenary in the morning, so be sure to catch that, and we'll be interviewing the plenary speaker afterwards, who I think is JJ Wilson. I ought to know that because I'm going to be interviewing him, so come along for that tomorrow. Okay, thanks for watching. Bye bye.